What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So, back in the day, I'd say up until about 15 years ago, in the NBA, if you were going to be a successful team, if you wanted to win, you had to have the enforcer. You had to have that guy who was going to stand up for the team, a guy out there that was going to maintain and dictate order when it came to the opposition is concerned, to cut down on their bullying tactics, to not try to physically assault the other team. You know what I'm saying? You had to have a guy who was going to knock some sense into the other team's so-called enforcer, and a guy that was just going to maintain order of the team anyway. But oftentimes, the enforcer was not the best player. All right? Charles Oakley was never the best player on the team. Rick Mahorn was never the best player. Now, Charles Barkley was one of those rare exceptions of a great player that was an enforcer. But the Davis boys weren't the best players. You know, Maurice Lucas was one of the best players on his teams, but not quite the best player. But one of the most volatile players in the history of the game was a man by the name of John Brisker. Right? Now, he's forgotten today. Matter of fact, it's not even known whether he's still alive. He hasn't been heard from in nearly 45 years. It's assumed that he's deceased. And there are many different theories as to what happened to him. But even in life, John Brisker was a man of mystery, intrigue, and mayhem. He was born back in 1947 in Detroit, Michigan. And he lived in the slums of Michigan, not in the suburban area. He grew up in the ghetto, and life was not life was not easy for John Brisker growing up. And you know, one of the things that he was able to do very well was fight. And that would serve a huge benefit for him going into his young adulthood. But he also excelled in athletics. He excelled in athletics. He loved basketball. He was also very good at football. And interestingly, he also was very good at playing, I think he was, if I'm not mistaken, I remember reading he was in the band in his high school. I think he played an instrument and was in the band, which people gotta remember, man, at one point in time, the band was big, you know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't nothing sissy about being in the band. You know, that was a big part of the black culture in schools at one point. But anyway, as he became a young man and wanted to play basketball further, he went to the University of Toledo and played on the Toledo Rockets. And with that particular team, he excelled. And ultimately, when he went pro, at first he decided to play with the ABA, which is a team that had been in existence since 1967. An organization, that had been in existence since 1967. And he had his best years in the ABA. Initially with the Pittsburgh Pipers, who later became the Condors. And during his years in the ABA, John Brisker averaged almost 27 points per contest. 27 points per game in the ABA, and he was one of the stars of the ABA. One of those years, I think it might have been 1970-71, he averaged 29 points a game. As a matter of fact, during the year when he averaged 29 points a game, he infamously had back-to-back 50-point games during one stretch. And he held his own against NBA players who moved to the ABA in individual matchups, including players like Rick Barry and others. And but the problem with John Brisker was, he had a great game, man. He was physical, like a smaller version of, say, Karl Malone. He was physical down low. He had a great jumper for the time, range out to 17, 18 feet. He was a hard matchup. But his problem was his temper. And this caused problems for him. And as a consequence, he was ejected from numerous games. Maybe, I think his first year in the ABA, he was ejected out of 10 or 15 games, always receiving technical fouls and getting into fights with opponents and teammates in practice. And he was known for threatening people. You know what I'm saying? If he got into it with somebody, he had a gun. Matter of fact, I believe his gun sometimes his gun was courtside in a backpack near where the bench was, or right where the bench was. I mean, it's different times, man. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about the early 70s. Yeah, he was just a really volatile guy. He always got into fights, but he was always whooping people's ass, and he was feared throughout the ABA. And he was known as the undisputed heavyweight champion of the NBA. Nobody wanted to fight this guy. In 1972, he switched to the NBA. And he played for the Seattle Supersonics. And he played under the legendary Bill Russell, who by this time, of course, had been retired and switched to coaching. He did not get along with Bill Russell at all. He did not get along with Bill Russell. They had a terrible relationship to the point where it can be said reasonably that Bill Russell tried to ruin his career. Now, there are rumors that it had something to do with a woman. Okay? Which would mean that Bill Russell was out there tapping around. He was married with kids. But we don't know exactly what it was, but that was the rumors. So basically, Bill Russell was doing everything he could to marginalize John Brisker's minutes and pushing him out of rotation. And by 1975, he was out the NBA. Not because he couldn't play anymore. By 1975, he was only 27 years old, 28 years old. The problem was his reputation and politics. And the next couple of years he was out the NBA. So what happened was, apparently, in early 1978, Brisker came up with this idea to launch an import-export business. And he decided to travel to Uganda to start this business. Now, at the time, Uganda was under the dictatorship of Idi Amin. All right? So he traveled over to Uganda, allegedly, And the last time that he contacted anybody was on April the 11th, 1978, when he called his girlfriend. He called her while she was in Seattle. He was never heard from again afterwards. Now, there have been rumors as to what had happened to him. One of the rumors is that he was killed by Ugandan royalty, killed by Idi Amin for getting out of pocket. One of the rumors is that he was shot and killed as a mercenary. We don't know. But he was declared dead in absentia back in May of 1985 by the medical examiner of King County for the purpose of selling his estate. However, the State Department could not confirm that Brisker had traveled to Africa in the first place. So, it's not known. It's never been confirmed whether he's alive or dead. Maybe he, was killed. Maybe he just decided never to fucking return. Maybe he fell in love with someone over there and just decided never to fucking return, and he lived his life over there and died, or maybe he's still alive, and I don't know. We'll never know. But John Brisker, a person who had the potential to be one of the all-time greats, but, sometimes politics get in the way, and sometimes fate gets in the way of what could have been or what you want to happen. But anyway, tell me what you guys think.